How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Ryan Garcia, and today we want to discuss Andrew Benintendi. He's had a bad start with the Yankees so far, but nothing to worry about. I think he's in, 1 for 20 in his last couple of games since joining the Bombers, but he's made an impact in maybe ways that you might not know, and we should not be worried about him because he is a stellar player. He does get on base, and sometimes it just takes an adjustment period for guys to get used to playing in pinstripes. You know, the intensity, the expectations, the discipline that these guys require. You know, Benintendi was one of the best players in the Royals. Now he's a mid player on the Yankees. And I think that that's kind of hard to situate for some players, but I do think he's going to pick it up in a couple of days and really make an impact for this team in many more ways than he has been so far. But Ryan, before we dive into his analytics, his stats, and what he's done and what he can do, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. The Yankees have an off day, kind of gives everyone a little some time to recharge. This team's definitely kind of going through it right now, so I think this is kind of a nice day for them and for fans too to kind of just breathe a little bit. And I think Benintendi's kind of the perfect player to talk about when it comes to let's just breathe a little bit, right? I don't think Yankee fans have been necessarily harsh with Benintendi. That's definitely not what I'm going to start saying. I mean, it's been 7 games. I think most people can realize that. But watching his at bats, the strikeouts are up, and you're like, well, this guy is supposed to come in here and put the ball and play a lot. And we saw like yesterday, I believe he struck out 3 times. Um, you know, so there are definitely going to be people who are like, oh, this is not what we were, trying to get. We were trying to get an impact player here. And with him and Hicks struggling at the same time, it's kind of like, it's like we got a guy to play left field for the Yankees, and he's starting to struggle too. We just came off of, last year where the first time when we got Gallo, he was struggling the same way. And the difference I would say here is, Benintendi, he's not chasing more than he did before. I think, when you look at what Gallo did this year, he was chasing a lot more out of the zone. And Benintendi is not expanding the strike zone. He's getting, he's swinging and missing a lot in the zone. That's something that usually corrects itself over a larger sample. We know Benintendi is very reliant on, his BABIP, his batting average with balls in play. That's one of his skills this year. I know a lot of people look at BABIP as a source of luck. I think when you're in that 350, 360 range, it's more of a skill. He has great spray charts. He hits the ball the other way at a decent clip in terms of ground balls. He doesn't pull fly balls enough, but I imagine that changes a little bit here. We don't know if he's making an adjustment too. He's playing in Yankee Stadium now instead of that cavernous Kansas City field. Perhaps he's trying to look to pull the ball a little bit over the fence, or maybe he realizes, hey, I can't, dunk in bloopers the way I could in Kansas City. So I'm trying to make an adjustment here at Yankee Stadium. I think a road trip in St. Louis, Seattle, places like that, those ballparks are a little more similar to that Kansas City ballpark are going to help him because he's going to get away from Yankee Stadium, get some time to kind of build himself up, and then come back for a home stint kind of red hot. We've seen this with a lot of Yankees where, they were either able to get it going on the road when they first got here, or, they struggled at home, whatever it may be. I do think that Benintendi is someone who's too talented, too skilled to be a bad hitter over a very long period of time. This is a guy who's projected to have an OPS well over 750, which in this run environment is pretty good. And his walking abilities, his plate discipline's remarkable. I think we can both admire that the dude walks so much, and it's great. So ultimately, I think Benintendi's struggles are more of a, it's a small adjustment. Maybe it was not the best thing that his first series or his first stint with the Yankees came at home. And hopefully on the road, he can correct things a little bit, because I really do think when he starts getting going and we get Stanton back and we get Bader back, this lineup's going to be really, really deep.
You're absolutely right about that. They are going to be extremely deep, and they have a lot of talent. Look, Benintendi, I think honestly the team just goes through these weird cold spurs, like this cold streaks rather, that you just don't see it from them. Like they just don't seem energetic. I think Bader, he's a character. He's got a lot of energy. I think he's going to bring a lot of charisma to this squad. They kind of need it. Like they need someone to elevate everybody that brings the energy. We don't have anyone that's like a pure character, right? A guy that just gets everybody hyped. That does things differently. He's electrifying. I think Bader has that personality. Everyone's kind of by the book on this Yankee team. They're very like somber. They don't get crazy. Trevino's the only guy that really stands out to me, and Nestor, who like really have that personality. So I'd like to see someone in the outfield with that as well to kind of help, spur everybody else. But Benintendi, if you look at his stats since joining the Yankees, they don't look bad. Like some people are like, oh, like people are already shitting on the guy. And I'm like, take it easy, bro. It's been like what, 4 or 5, 6 games, 7 games. Like, come on. Like we're really going to make like assumptions over 7 games. And even then, his walk numbers are tremendous. So he comes from the Yankees. First game is on July 28th. He has one strikeout, doesn't get on base, doesn't really do much. Then the next day he has a hit, a run, and he has a walk. Then against Kansas City on Saturday on July 30th has 3 walks and an RBI. And then on Sunday has 2 walks, right? So over his short sample size of 7 games, he has 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 walks. And he struck out a couple times. So 3, 4, 5, 6 times, which is more than expected with him. But I think it just takes time to like make that small adjustment. Like you said, everybody that ever comes to the Yankees has to make that small adjustment. The fans are different. The atmosphere is different. The expectations are elevated. I think maybe you just get into your own head after a little while. If you're struggling to make contact, watching him, he hasn't looked altogether that confident in the batter's box. After he strikes out, he kind of just like hangs his head. And I think that this day off is going to be a nice cushion for him to just get back. Once he gets that first like big hit, I think he's going to feel the energy. When you're a Yankee player, like Trevino, for example, is a perfect example of this. He has lived off of the energy from those 2 walk-off wins he had, those 2 walk-off hits, right? That little bit of energy, that spark, that knowing what that feels like gives Yankee players a little bit of, confidence. I think Judge is living off of that as well right now. The guy's unstoppable. So Benintendi, when he comes up big, that first moment where he feels the Yankee fan base, that support around him, he's going to be awesome. He's going to have a great season for us the rest of the way, and I think he's going to be an impactful player. My question is, I don't exactly know where to use him in the lineup right now. I kind of like him in the 5 or 6 spot. I don't trust Josh Donaldson in cleanup or the 5 slot. I think he shouldn't be in the lineup come the postseason. What is your thoughts on how they utilize him in the batting order and just kind of maximize his value?
So I would hit Benintendi probably, like you said, 5 or 6. He acts as that second leadoff guy. You think Rizzo, Judge, Stanton, they all kind of clear out the bases on their own. They're remarkable home run hitters and extra base hit machines. And Benintendi kind of acts as a second leadoff guy for the lower part of that lineup. You think Glaber, Bader, when he gets back, Trevino, IKF, right? Those guys are not necessarily walk first guys. Those are guys who excel at either putting the ball in play or forcing something to happen. And so Benintendi kind of gives you that leadoff guy, that walking presence, that guy who's going to force pitchers to still have to make extra pitches. And on top of that, putting a lefty behind and in front of Stanton is that if you're a manager, you can't throw in a power righty to face Stanton because you're going to have them face a lefty right after. And you're really not going to see too many situations where it's 2 outs and Stanton's up because you have DJ, Judge, and Rizzo, and they have such high OBPs. They're so great at getting on base or having a productive plate appearance that, it's going to be hard for me to imagine that a team's going to be comfortable trying to hedge their bet against beating Stanton with a righty on the mound, knowing that if they fail to beat Stanton, which a lot of pitchers have failed to beat Stanton, you're going to have to face a Benintendi with a righty and a mismatch there. And ultimately you're just not going to be in a spot as a pitching staff, you're not going to be in a spot to succeed. And I guess ultimately as a lineup, that's what your goal is, to make managers uncomfortable, make them make bad pitching decisions or bullpen decisions. And, that'll help you score runs more often. And that's really what this team needs. They've struggled with runners in scoring position. They've had the Donaldsons of the world come up with runners in scoring position. Glaber's kind of cooled down a little bit. I expect him to pick it back up. But having Benintendi, if he can pick it up soon and he can kind of fill in his role better, which I imagine he will, this team's just going to be way more effective at driving in those runners because they've had guys on in big situations, right? Like the second against the Mariners, they had the tying run at second base, right? They've had, even when you think of that inning where they tie the game, Hicks hit into a double play right after, had Hicks, even hit a sac fly, or Hicks got a base hit. Maybe the Yankees go on to win that game. Not to put it all on Aaron Hicks, but I'm just saying this team has not come up in those situations as frequently. And that's just because they don't have the right guys hitting in those spots. And I imagine as they get healthier, as Benintendi gets better, they'll definitely fill out that lineup better and they'll score more runs.
You can hope so. We can hope so. I mean, he gets on base enough, walks enough. And like I said before the podcast, sometimes walks can be even more beneficial than singles because you force pitchers to throw more pitches to you. And of course, if you have guys on base, you want to be hitting the ball instead of walking. It's a little bit more valuable there. But he has 11.2% walk rate. So that's a pretty solid number. He's still only striking out at 13.8%. He is a very effective player. I am very curious to see how he continues to perform the rest of the season, but we're going to need him in October, right? This is a guy who we traded for because we want to have someone who is going to be reliable in the playoffs and can produce. So that's first and foremost, you know what I mean? Like right now, I don't really care how he performs. Like we are going to make the playoffs. he needs to ramp it up and show consistency leading into October, like that last couple of weeks of the season. Like that's where I want to see him really pick things up and start to get on base via hits and, get some stuff into the outfield. He's really, I mean, the guy just hits it all over the field. His spray chart, as you mentioned before, is like a Picasso painting. It's just all over the place. He has 4 doubles in the left corner as a lefty. Like you don't see that very often. So that's pretty cool for him. Like all of his homers are in, kind of right center field. If he can pull it a little bit more, which is maybe what he's trying to do. Like you said, maybe he's just trying to pull it that little extra bit so he can get a little bit more home runs, a little bit more slugging power under his belt. But in my opinion, just don't try to fix what's not broken. I hope the Yankees aren't trying to mess with him too much because I just don't think it's necessary. He's good enough that you don't have to change his swing. You don't have to try and make him more of a slugger. Just let him get on base. Let him do what he does best. He's IKF on the box, but actually gets like multi-base hits, and he can actually get on base in like a more strategic way and more productive. He makes good contact. He doesn't just dribble freaking ground balls back to the pitcher. So, this is a guy who I think is going to be extremely valuable come the postseason, but I'm not worried about him right now. The sample size of 7 games, just 2. Like we've seen Hicks go on 2 months of bad hitting, and we've still played him. We saw Joey Gallo have 4 months of awful hitting, but we still played him every day. Let's not jump on Benintendi for having 7 days of bad play, or not even bad play, just not getting enough hits as we had anticipated. This is not a problem. If you're concerned about him, I would not be. So, that's my kind of final take here. Any last thoughts?
I think ultimately, you're right. This is a small sample. Benintendi's going to be fine, right? If the Yankees are concerned, not the Yankees, if fans are concerned, remember, 7 games are 7 games. Like you mentioned, we've seen Hicks, he had a really horrific month of May. And after a really good month of July, his numbers looked a lot better. I know he's slumping now in August. But that June and July made his numbers on the season look pretty damn good. So, you can realistically have 7 bad games. The Yankees as a whole are slumping, right? They haven't been either 9-13 in their last 22 games. It's kind of been a team-wide slump outside of Judge, DJ, and Rizzo. But I think Benintendi will kick it back into high gear. And ultimately, you'd rather him slump now than slump in October, because if he slumps now, you imagine that, to kind of mitigate that slump, he gets really red hot. And it's going to happen at some point. And if it happens in September, October, Yankees might win the World Series. So, I'd rather it happen now than happen later.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Let him get this out of the way now, still getting on base, doing a good job defensively. So not too worried. He also has 2 stolen bases with the Yankees in a week, rather in 7 games, whereas he only had 3 with the Royals before that. So he's running a lot better too. There's value we're getting that's just not seeing the eye, and we have to acknowledge those minor details. But guys, hope you enjoyed this episode discussing Andrew Benintendi, his struggles recently, but nothing to be too worried about just yet. If it does get to that point, we will obviously be talking about it, but right now, way too early. Sample size is too small. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt as he move forward. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. We'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.